Good morning, everybody. This is Matt Kinsman at Connectiv. Welcome to the Digital Media Council meeting. Today we're going to be talking about best performing ads in the days of Google ad blockers. It's a special day. We're actually coming here live from ALM's New York City offices. So much thanks to ALM for hosting us, in particular Jay Kirsch and Rachel Walensky, who's been extremely accommodating, and we certainly appreciate everything that they're doing for us today. Just a couple quick logistics before we get started. Those of you who are dialing in remotely, you can select the chat bubble that you see to submit your questions. You can submit them at any time, and we'll address those over the course of the discussion. For those of you in the room, we do want this to be a discussion, so please feel free to chime in, ask questions, make statements, share your own experiences. We do want this to be as much of a discussion as possible. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our DMC chair, Roberta Muller.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thanks so much for coming today. Thank you, ALM, for hosting in this great office space. Just real quick, so yesterday I was in Chicago. I was invited to go to a CDOC meeting with some of our peers. Winsight Media was there, Bobbitt, Farm Journal, Brief Media, Watt. And it was a great discussion, a collaborative discussion on sales collateral, training, margins on your products, digital operations workflow. We talked about the hardships of when clients don't send their material in on time and you're shifting revenue into the second quarter. So, and the reason why I'm telling you that is because that's what Connectiv is for too, peer-to-peer discussion, right? Asking questions, being vocal, using your peers, because the bottom line is we all need to be successful, and to be successful, really working with each other is just the best way to go. Bouncing ideas off of each other, talking about our hardships and challenges, and talking about our success as well so we can build off of each other. So that's what today's meeting is about also here live in New York City. I'm going to turn it over now to Todd. Welcome. We're going to talk about best practices in ads and also with Google ad blockers, which is just such a pain point. Oh my gosh. So go ahead, turn it over.
All right, everyone, I'm really happy to be here this morning to talk to you a little bit about Google's Coalition for Better Ads, which is a little bit of a double entendre for blocking ads. So look, over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to take you through really what we see has happened since they introduced it just a little over a year ago, how it's expanded, and what the impact has been on B2B in particular. I first gave a version of this presentation actually about 6 months ago at ABM. How many of you in the room were in that room for that? Okay, so just a handful. So this is good. So I prepared a larger deck actually for your benefit that make available and will be emailed out to you, that actually shows you in detail like which specific ad units they are blocking and visualizations of them and examples. We won't go through that today. Today is really going to be looking at two things. One is the math of how many ads and how many advertisers are at stake, at risk. And then also we've done a survey. We did a survey before they launched, and then a survey just recently with 300 publishers that are all B2B to see how it's impacting people's businesses. So let's get started.
This way, over here.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Oh, it's not working now.
The bottom button.
No, it's the big one. All right, I'll manage the slides for you. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no worries at all. All right, so let's go forward one. All right, so I was looking to see if there's an on-off switch or something magic. Oh, no, there we go. All right, so first let's just talk about what this is. This coalition is created by Google. Google is the coalition. They are the anchor tenant. Number two, they understand the motivation is reasonable that Google, what they're really worried about. In Europe in particular, ad blockers are a real thing. More than half of users in Europe are already blocking ads. If you're the size of Google, this is an actual existential threat to the growth of the business. And because you control the browser market, you have some control to try to improve it. So they didn't do anything about it. Their perspective internally is basically they didn't attend to the threat in the European market, and they essentially are capped in how much they can grow in Europe. And they do not want the US to follow this same this same route. So that is, understand that's from their perspective, they say we are worried about Google's ad business, but ostensibly they're worried about anyone who sells ads. And that's the language they would use when they are presenting this publicly, and it's real. They went out then to say, before we just block ads, all of them, they said, we're going to go survey 25,000 of our users and figure out which ads do people really dislike the most. And then we'll just block those. They began doing this and started blocking just essentially 1 year ago at the end of February of 2018. And they just announced recently that they're going worldwide. So they did North America and Europe last year, but they're going to roll out worldwide this July. So they are satisfied with the results, which they view as definitely positive. One of the first places to start the story is actually understanding who uses which browsers. So 2/3 of the browser market, which is how most of the B2B markets consumers are going to view your product, they're using these browsers, and 2/3 of them are likely to be Chrome users. In fact, the more advanced the user, the more likely they are to be using Chrome. The reason I start with this is basically this is the way all B2B audience and readers are. They're going through a Google product, right? And that's the main point of why I bring this up. So what happens if Google sees ads that they do not like on your site? It's not just that they block those ads, they block absolutely everything on your website. So it's very serious, the implication. And if unless you have registered with them, and we'll talk about this through this process, unless you have registered with them, one day you will just see revenue stop. So it's very abrupt. It's not like a gentle thing over. Go ahead.
That market share number, that's their total market share number, right? Does it differ in office environments versus the home environment?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can look it up and send you some feedback.
Great.
Yeah. So, and when you see it, this is the actual pop-up. There will be something that comes up on your screen that says all ads are blocked. It'll say, do you want to allow ads on the site? But most users are not going to click yes, show me ads, right? Unless they are really a publishing person who may understand the economic implications. But it's interesting, over the years, I've stress tested this with many professional friends of mine, and none of them feel any sense of, for something that's so sensitive of an issue to us in the industry, very few people I've met outside of the media industry have any sympathy for us. They're not like, oh God, I hadn't thought about it. Like, I do care about B2B journalism. I do want, no one internalizes that. So when they see this, they just click X and they're on their way. So again, I won't go through all the different ads here. They basically have a collection of common and what I would describe as high CPM ads especially, right? So they're not cutting out lower CPM squares and banners. It tends to be things that are more intrusive, things that have higher click rates. So whether it was pop-ups, interstitials, large stickies, autoplay ads, and then they had 8 types of mobile ads. So again, that'll be in my deck for you so you could go through it. All right, so let's get into the real meat of this. How big is this as a threat? So just in Q1 last year, 51% of all the ads placed in B2B media were at risk. Basically, they violated the Coalition for Better Ads. It's a huge amount. And when we did the ABM meeting in November, one of the most startling pieces is about 1/3 of the room raised their hand and said, I have lost a material amount of business now because of this. And we also got feedback in that room that they felt like Google was applying their enforcement very unevenly. Basically, in that room, a couple people stood up and said, you know what, I am doing basically an identical site to my #1 competitor. I have been absolutely decimated over the last few months. Apparently, they didn't get to our competitor. A year later, it does not look much different. So when we look back at Q1, so we just did this analysis over the last few days with the full Q1 numbers, basically a very small change, but not a lot. And this really, really surprised us. When we do this same analysis on large consumer websites, it's totally different. In consumer, basically 90% of them, before the rule went into effect, everyone basically kept collecting money on the highest CPM ads, and then the second they were at risk, they shut it off. But in B2B, the market has been slower to react, and that may also be that Google is not enforcing it as aggressively. So we went back and talked to a group of B2B publishers, and we used the same exact questions year over year, or almost exactly. We asked people if they were worried about it coming before it launched. So one thing, just as a look here, is what percent of ad sales comes from digital? Because we wanted to understand, like in B2B, there is a huge distribution of sophistication, right? You have essentially on the far right side, you have B2B companies that are pure plays. They only are digital or mostly digital. And then you have this very wide spectrum. So this is basically of total ad sales, how much comes from digital? Because we were curious to see if you were someone here who only made 5% of your revenue from digital, maybe you're less sophisticated and you shrug your shoulders and you say, who cares if Google is a threat? Or if you're over here, you should be saying, you know, most of our business is digital. Oh, actually, if you're really anywhere here, you would say this is a huge existential threat to me, and we need to react to it. So the most important takeaway I could share with you about B2B, this is across 300 B2B publishers, was almost a quarter are completely unaware this is happening at all. So basically, we send them the survey, and they were like, what is this about? I've never heard about anything like this. This is, for something that's such a big deal, this to us was an important message, basically. Like, if you're a Media Radar customer and you're B2B, this is like one of the first things during your onboarding process, we're like, hey, do you know about this? We need to talk because we can see you're running ads that they're going to come after you for. So then we went back. We said for the people who were in the quarter who said, we don't know anything about this, they basically said, no, we sell ads on our site, not Google's site. Right? And our ads are up to standard. We're not doing anything wrong here. Our ads are reviewed for questionable content. They would say, well, they weren't getting it essentially. If users don't see ads, users will switch away from Chrome. Right? This is a very publisher-centric view, but it's not real. Like this would be a minority of audience who would think this way. And to your question, hey, maybe corporate users don't use Chrome, which I don't believe is the case, but we'll get the numbers on that. For sure, that's out there.
That's my favorite one by far.
Right. A year ago, just less than half of people were worried about this at all. Today, 2/3 have said not only are they worried about it, 2/3 said they were losing revenue explicitly due to this. And basically 28%, so a little less than half of the 66, said we are losing a lot of money. This has been really negative for us.
Do they bounce back?
Yes.
You remove the
yes.
bad ads.
But not overnight.
Right.
So it creates essentially a 3-month hole in your year.
Okay, 3 months on average.
Yeah. By the way, even to get a phone number to talk to Google is like a $5,000 expense. They actually you can become a member, an associate member of the coalition for $5,000. And for that $5,000, they give you 2 things. You get a phone number and the ability to have remedy, basically, to say, hey, I actually don't, you're not applying this evenly. I want to be allowed to run this ad until everyone's applied evenly, or my audience I don't think is bothered. So a number of larger B2B firms have paid the toll.
Yearly fee?
It's like a yearly fee. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
A membership, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's really a gatekeeper fee, right? Another thing we saw is at least a dozen companies, we got multiple responses from different people And so depending on what part of the organization that we are in, we got different results. Some people in an organization would say, this is a huge problem, we're losing lots of money, and have really detailed comments. Then someone else say, no, this doesn't apply to us. Who hasn't been impacted? So of those who sell less advertising, they say they're less worried. And this to us is probably okay for some firms and not okay for others. We had a bit of a debate internally about this. In one breath, we said, oh God, this is like where you don't know the things you should be worried about. And this is how it shows up in a survey. It's like someone says, oh, I only do 5% of my digital's not for me. Digital is for some other B2B company. And this whole stuff with Google just reinforces why I don't want to be in digital. Others, on the other hand, legitimately will say, look, our audience doesn't consume digital. We know it for sure. We studied it. There are very few of those use cases, but they do exist. There are for sure categories. As you might imagine, almost perfectly correlated. The more business you're doing online, the more you viewed this as a threat and as something you should take seriously and respond to. And the most sophisticated firms are essentially building around it. Basically, they're either complying exactly to the letter of the law, or they're creating new ad formats that only exist on their site that are not intrusive, like they are genuinely creative and they're good for the advertiser and audience friendly. So by the way, this is the hypothesis that Google, when you meet with Google in person, they do talk about this. They say, we hope this evolves the industry in a good way. Like they're not trying to be Machiavellian or mean about it. They genuinely worry that it's like a threat. Ad blocking is the threat that they're worried about. So this is from the survey from 300 publishers. We asked the head of sales, what do they sell the most of, and to rank different ad formats by like how, what is the thing they sell the most to the fewest. So banners, native advertising is number 2 now, which I thought was really interesting. It's a real sign of how much things have evolved in the last couple of years. Then pop-ups, click-to-play, autoplay videos, sticky ads, and pre-stitial countdown ads. 2 of these are fully blocked by Google. So the first 2 things are not, and native really surged as a result of this change. And also native has been popular for a variety of reasons, and then it's driving revenue. And then also sticky ads and pre-stitial countdown ads, they're not actually, over the year, Google, because of negative feedback from publishers, did respond. And so there are some, basically with pre-stitial countdowns and sticky ads, basically they can't take as much of the page over. Basically, if you're within like 30% of the viewable space on the page, they won't block you. So they have shown some willingness to modify their behavior at Google. But big picture, besides native, we have not really seen much change in behavior. Basically, people are still selling the same ads and just hoping for the best. So one last piece on this in terms of solutions. One, sign up to be verified by Google. The number one reason to do this is if you sign up, they will notify you and give you 30 days to remedy for free. There's no cost to this piece at all. And this is the most sensible and practical thing you can do for sure. Number 2 is measure how much you have at risk. Go look and see how much money are you making on pop-ups and sticky ads and lay it out to figure out what it is. Companies like Media Radar for sure can also do a diagnostic for you and just say, hey, out of your total number of ads, you had this % that were this % that were that. But if you're measuring this yourself, the easiest is just to look at the financials. Stop using the restricted ad formats. So at most of the firms we know, once they've been, especially if they've been caught, quote unquote, they just want to move around this. Like it's so complicated just to run a good business anyway. The last thing anyone wants is like more things to worry about. So many people just said, yeah, once we're cut, we're going to adjust. educate users. For smaller audiences in particular, we've seen some success where if the ads get blocked, basically to show information that says, hey, we will no longer show you our site for free. Please unblock me. And a little explanation. In the consumer world, you should know, this is worth sharing. This has been enormously successful. There are some great articles talking about this at The Guardian, but it's not just like, on news sites, they have it the best, right? They'll say, if you want democracy, you unclick the button and you allow ads. But others have also charged money for it. They basically say, look, if you really dislike ads, please make a donation to us of any amount. For The Guardian, they came out and talked about it. They've made like $100 million. It's like an unbelievable volume of money. Embrace different ad formats like native, which we see the market is adjusting. And then join the coalition's Better Ads experience. I think for those who are on the phone here, I think if you are a bigger firm and you have the resources to pay the $5,000 and you're trying to influence the discussion, I don't think they're going to stop the program. But I do think they've shown over the year they are listening, right? Like a lot of money is at stake for a lot of businesses and families. And so I don't think they're completely tone deaf to that. But I think you don't get there through just sort of announcing how much you hate Google. I think it's here. I think you join in with them and you try to influence the discussion. That won't be for every size firm, but for a larger firm, having a seat at the table and also having B2B have a seat at the table, I personally think is very helpful. I think the world of Google is very, we see what ads run on Google and YouTube, and it is incredibly consumer oriented. Where LinkedIn is very B2B focused, even Facebook is B2B focused, but Google's not. Google's business is super consumer oriented. And so whatever happens in the B2B world, my sense is that it's an afterthought to them. And so having representation, I think, is good for them to know. So everyone, thank you for inviting me. That's my piece on this. I will pass this over to you, Justin, and to you, Reggie. But I will send the deck. You have the deck, and we'll distribute it. If anyone has follow-up questions, actually, do we want to do questions?
I was going to say, we've got one comment. The gatekeeper fee sounds like extortion.
Yeah, look, I think definitely when we had the ABM meeting or the Connectiv meeting in the fall, that was definitely the vocabulary that was used also. So it is
$5,000 to a company doing several $100 billion in revenue.
Yeah, no. I think this is just probably. I actually think it's just for them. It's probably less. I know it's not about the money. It's purely just a way to figure out who to queue up first and to prioritize. To filter. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, that was it.
All right, everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess timing on that is perfect, and Todd and I did not prepare this in advance. But what we're going to do with the second part of this is basically walk through some examples that we've done at my company to navigate around some of these problems in terms of creating custom solutions to circumvent the Better Ad, coalition. And I think the problem with the two, let's see.
The big button.
Oops, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. There you go. Perfect. I think the problem with this too, as we talk more about the Better Ad standards, is Google is right? That's sort of the point. The experience has been completely ruined for people reading anything online, on mobile. It's a disaster, right? For people who are out there reading the news today, or you consume things on your digital, devices everywhere. I mean, try reading the daily news on your way into work from a mobile device, right? You're covered with pop-up ads, things that are intrusive. You can barely read a story sometimes on pages with things popping up on the bottom, on the top. Is out of control. So I would happen to agree. This is the next phase of the internet. Good thing Google's got a grip on it, that someone has a grip on it to even approach these kind of problems, and rather not just have ads that are intrusive everywhere. And part of our review at my company at Strategic Insights, we have a group of brands just like a lot of these companies here do, where we have a lot of media-based revenue coming in. And when this started to impact us last year, I would agree with Todd as well that we were definitely impacted by this. I think the 3-month assessment was pretty on the money, actually, where it was a period of our sales team starting to shift their strategies on what it is they're going to be selling. And are we just going to keep going with the old stuff? Do we let it go? At what point do we cut the cord on some of those ads that we know aren't going to happen? And even let go of some of those technology vendors that are providing these ads that are not meeting these specs. So, what we did at Strategic Insight was obviously we not only took a look at our ad units in general, but we also took a good run through our exposure of invalid traffic, which for me is a big part of what we're talking about here, because this, it has an increased client focus on all of our placements. Our clients can see the traffic that we have on our site because they're running ads, and they know the percentage of traffic that is positive or negative and human or not, just based on certain behaviors. And all of the behavior aspects of what we're talking about here is exactly what Google is doing to detect these things. For me, I'm on the technology side of things. So it's usually my problem to try to get around this, and what are we going to do here to circumvent it? We know this is happening. Like, what's next here, Justin? So we have a couple of goals. At my company, obviously, we want to implement new ad technology to enhance our user experiences that aren't as intrusive. Things can't be popping up, taking up your entire space on our media sites. Obviously, we need new digital content, which I want to talk about as something new. We've actually started to shift towards away from our standard box ads and things like that, and building some custom high-impact ad executions now, right, that meet all, not only the better ad standards from Google, but general viewability standards in terms of putting ads on the web. So one quick slide on invalid traffic, because we did, I think, a session on this about 1.5 years or 2 years ago now, and this seems to come up every time we talk about this, so I thought I would just do a quick 2-minute run through this. So, in terms of invalid traffic, this has a big impact on our better ad standards, because ads should be viewed by people, not by robots, right? And for anyone out there who has a website, you have bots on your website, whether you like it or not. It's a natural phase of the internet. For me, having dealt with technology, I've been a developer now over 15 years. This has been something we've dealt with since I've been building websites. It's kind of always been there, but only in the last few years has this really come to the mainstream of B2B media and sales, where now we're realizing, hey, we're serving ads, but you could really fake your impressions. You could buy traffic, if you will, and there's a lot of people who do that, where you actually have ad campaigns, you go and you buy keywords, right? You could force traffic on your site, but when you get the traffic on your site and you get 100,000 page views on a page, and the average time on page is less than a fraction of a second, something's wrong, right? Your advertisers aren't going to be happy that you just served 100,000 impressions to nobody, right? So just to get around this really quick, there's a lot of ways you can do this, but what we did at Strategic Insight was we went to the professionals. And if anyone has this problem, not here for a sales pitch, but put a couple vendors on here that we did reviews on early on when we were evaluating our invalid traffic percentage on our sites. Moat, Forensic, White Ops, Pixelate, all really good. After reviewing some, I really like Pixelate. Could recommend them more for anyone looking at doing evaluations on your site on what % of traffic is human and not. And what this vendor does, you can see a little screenshot I grabbed on the bottom here, which is basically gives us viewability into each one of our ad campaigns that are running on our site. And I could see what percentage of that traffic is people and what % is not people. You can see for some of those campaigns, we're looking at numbers as high as 20, 30% of that traffic is not going to a human being, right? Big problems when it comes to better ad standards, because we're not going to make any revenue on that, or advertisers are going to be pretty unhappy with that. So our approach to all of this was doing this first before we take a look at our sites, looking at our inventory of what we're selling, before making any hard decisions on what people think we should sell and what we shouldn't sell. Data is the answer for me on anything, right? Data is the key to making those decisions. And this really led us to make that next step of what ads should we get rid of, what shouldn't we get rid of in terms of bot traffic, as well as taking into account, the better ad standards and knowing what placements that Google is also saying, those are things we don't want anymore on our sites. So one example here, which I think is a really nice takeaway from what Todd presented, which is that a lot of sites have full-page ads, right? That's a big no-no for the better ad standard, because you have a big pop-up ad on the page, and you have to exit out. And if you're on a mobile device, sometimes you have to fat finger it, and you can't touch it, and more ads pop up. It's terrible. So one way that we were able to circumvent this process was to custom build our own solution that met Google's better ad standards, meets all the viewability standards. And this is more of a custom implementation we did with JavaScript right into the Google DoubleClick for Publishers system, right? We have a vendor we work with that helps us serve ads, and we tested this out to make sure that this met all of our better ad standards because there's no pop-up windows. Similar experience, it's a full page covering the screen. It could run an image, it runs video, it goes away to meet viewability standards in about X seconds automatically. The user doesn't touch anything. And in some cases, if the user starts to scroll, it will automatically kind of fade out into our website here. And this has gotten a lot of attention from our advertisers, actually, because it meets the viewability standards. It meets what Google calls their better ad standards, because the way Google is determining what meets their standards, I'm going to geek out for a second, but there's like DOM manipulation going on to serve ads, right? From the technology side, there's a certain way I can build that to make something pop up. That's what Google is considering bad, right? I can't do that anymore. But I can still do things like this that use CSS and JavaScript because it meets all their standards. It's a similar experience to some extent. It's less intrusive because it's automated and it goes away by itself. And our advertisers are greatly interested in things like this. This was built in-house, just using Google DoubleClick for publishers. They have an API you can hook into and build things. And if you have a team that's savvy enough that knows how to do some of this. We also work with a vendor in Brooklyn called OAO. If you guys don't know that, it's outsourced ad ops. And they're our extension of our company to help us serve ads. And we're also able to leverage that to get around that $5,000 fee with Google because our vendor pays that fee because they're part of the network and we just work with our vendor. So we don't have a phone number to call Google, but I can call our experts at OAO and they have route into Google. And even though we're paying this vendor to help serve ads, it prevents us from paying that cost. We're paying a service fee for other things, but it's a part of their service. And when we need Google, we go through them and they can get into Google.
Do any of your sites have infinite scroll?
They do. So actually, I was taking some notes as Todd was talking about this, but I'll talk about that. So, as we were coming into 2019, we obviously, just like a lot of media sites, we are redesigning, remodeling our sites. Our sales teams has opted to remove a lot of the legacy placements, like a 300 by 250 box ad, right? Like they're kind of done with that, or inventory is basically running house ads. We've redesigned our sites to be a little more full page, less intrusive ads on the page, and you bet one of the keys that we put in there was an infinite article scroller on all of our media sites. And if you guys want to check it out, you can take a look at sites like plansponsor.com or planadvisor.com or Chief Investment Officer, which just won the Brands of the Year at the Neal Awards. All of those sites have infinite scrolling on article pages, and that's how we've been able to account for some of our lost inventory by removing ads. The infinite scroller has increased our page view count, and that's a nice way to give and take on where we're removing ads that don't meet the better ad standards. We're going to throw in more page views on sections that get traffic.
Did the infinite scroller increase your page view count?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because on our media sites anyway, I would say 90% of our traffic is on our articles and on our homepage. We have extensive sections on events and video and award sections, and we have behind the firewall research sections. All of those sites don't, they all have all their traffic going to articles. So you bet I would say that by introducing the infinite scroller on our articles where we know our traffic was, we probably increased traffic somewhere around 20% over the year. Absolutely.
So is that a hack to Site Catalyst or something to get a count of page view?
It is. I wouldn't consider it a hack because at this point, a lot of sites are doing it. If you're using like a content management system like Drupal or WordPress or some Python-based systems, it's out of the box on those platforms. It's built in now. So there isn't much custom manipulation. We don't hack any Google tags or anything like that. Yeah. But for people familiar with Google Analytics, the Google Analytics default JavaScript tags are already set up for this. You just kind of have to pass them the right information. And that was a game changer for us going from 2018 to 2019. One other new direction we've gone, which for me, this is borderline, I think, between what Google calls better ad standards and what's not. So we went to a couple of different vendors this year, and we're looking at services that were specifically implementations using JavaScript. It's really specific because it's things that I can get around DOM manipulation and things that Google will flag. So there's a vendor we went to last year called Spottable. And I've seen this vendor in the past. This was a kind of junky vendor for me over the years. But we did a recent demo with them, and as always, I'm always impressed with vendors that come back after I haven't seen them for 5 years with something that blew me away. And what Spottable did is basically created all new ad implementations that meet viewability and Google Better Ad standards. One of them is this thing here, which is a kind of an old school model, right? That little peel back thing. We've reintroduced this model in the last year or two, and advertisers have jumped on this on a couple of our sites. I think for me, for one reason, the desktop experience for me is rather shoddy, right? A little peel back thing. It's less intrusive. It's not in the way. It meets their ad standards because there's no pop-ups or anything. But the mobile experience on this is quite good. And we have a really strong gain in our mobile traffic at our company. I would say in the last 5 years, it's always been an uphill, track with mobile, but it's really jumped now. Like we're not quite at 50-50, but we're at 70-30, which is amazing. And our advertisers are asking for things like this on our mobile experiences, especially when we have a big conferences business at Strategic Insight. It's a big part of our revenue stream. And when we have annual conferences, our traffic booms on our event sections, or like our Plan Advisors of the Year or CIOs of the Year. And these things are running on the mobile sites for those campaigns, and they do quite well. I've seen an increase in things like this, but really specifically for mobile, to be quite honest, because it meets the Google Better Ad standards.
And don't let your salesperson say, but can make the flap wiggle so someone can see it, so they know to peel it.
It's really specific that it's not intrusive. It doesn't wiggle or move. It doesn't, you know what I mean? It's very specific in the way it's set up. And I only chose this one here because we've used this one. Spottable has a whole mess of these type of things that are video kind of things, but they're all standard, complicit. So it's worth looking at. Not all of their ad implementations are my cup of tea, but our advertisers like it.
Great.
Third one on here, which is really more of a conversation of a shift in strategy. This is less on the technology side for me and more on the editorial marketing end of things, which is that another thing that for me was kind of dead for years was podcasts. I mean, I can't believe this thing made a comeback. But from a technology point of view, this has been something our brands have shifted here, where we're doing a lot less recently of video content, specifically because video has been one of the things that Google has specifically flagged, right? Videos auto-playing, auto-running. They've stopped all of this now, right? With Chrome, nothing auto-plays. You can't have anything off the screen playing. I hate that experience. And so we've shifted to podcasts, and this has really gained momentum for us in the last 12 months when we started to shift gears on changing our ad strategies on the site, where we obviously have a couple of different executions of this, but we've used SoundCloud for these in the past. It's been a real big push for us to gain traffic on the social media front. I was blown away at what they showed me in terms of our traffic gains from specific podcasts on CIO in the last 12 months. I thought they were joking. It was no joke. When they put these podcasts up on sites like, LinkedIn, Facebook, you stream it right from those sites, you get clicks, you get views, you can put ads. We've done vocal ads in the podcast where they actually do like a radio show style ad discussion. And we have transcripts of these that display on the page in a visual format, which is good for SEO, and you can actually crawl the text on some of these ads. I put this in here because for me, I was just amazed that this made kind of a comeback, but we've had a resurgence of our podcast and audio streaming content on site because it's had a social media impact, and it's really a nice social push out there, more than just retweeting your content. This has gone a long way to making it much more interactive, making your time on page much higher, and obviously that's better numbers for your ads.
Right, that's great.
Yep. And that was the last one for me, those 3 examples.
Any questions? I'm going to run home and set up a peel back.
Sounds great. Okay, so I think I'm probably going to echo a lot of the same things that Justin spoke about. Todd brought it up that we have to be creative. We all face a lot of the same challenges as publishers with these better ad standards, and how we're going to look at our business moving forward, whether it's partnering with other media companies or, the duopoly of Google and Facebook will essentially let us know how we're going to pan out for the future. So at Northstar, we have a few similar challenges. In the B2B side of business, we're finding that a lot of partners are not working with agencies that are adhering to or helping them adhere to digital standards and practices, whether it's, the better ad standards defined by Google, Lean Ads Initiative by IAB, anyone really. Sometimes we just get a standard 300 by 250 that really is sized completely incorrect. So, when you're dealing with that type of audience as your partners, you really have to be able to offer up some different types of solutions to make it effective and adhere to the guidelines that we're working with. And the second challenge is really just making sure internally that we're educating our internal sales team, our internal operations teams to make sure that, they know that a product like a push down or a pop-up that has traditionally yielded solid performance is something that's on the coalition's radar for deprecation, pretty much. We're currently trying to create a better user experience, knowing that we're a specific brand authority. We have solid voice in the marketplace, and we want to be able to leverage things like native advertising to help us in that space. And, Justin and Todd both spoke to that. Building more engaging ads through an internal creative agency. We haven't had that prior, and I think now that will be more relevant. We have the team internally that understands what type of ads our audience engages with the most. So being able to leverage that and offer that kind of authoritative voice to our partners will be beneficial as well. And really just adjusting to industry trends. So a lot of the numbers that I'm going to quickly talk about is what is kind of changing our direction or leading our direction. Digital advertising, as we all know, it is growing. It's going to be 50% of all media spends by 2022. We're looking at, I think, going to be $465 billion in digital advertising by 2022. So we know that it's growing. To Todd's point about the publishers that are not recognizing, the relevancy of digital, the numbers show it all. 63% of that is going to the duopoly. So Google, Facebook, they're taking a majority of that digital spend. So we have to figure out how to work with them by adhering to these better ad standards, but also leveraging some of their opportunities in our brand safe environment to be able to see our dollars grow. The next five, which a lot of people don't really talk about as much, Amazon, Microsoft, Oath, Snapchat, Twitter, they're taking $29 billion of that and continuing to grow as well. The rest of us, and these numbers are for both B2C and B2B, are on a decline. We're expected to be on a decline of 11% in 2019. So to me and us at Northstar, this tells us that we have to be able to figure out how to work with social to be able to increase our market share, but also adhering to the guidelines to make our products continue to be relevant. So a few of our products that I'm going to mention, a lot of them are very similar to what Justin mentioned, so kind of taking a different direction. We recently launched a new product called Social Fuse. It's packaging a social ad, a branded social ad, and driving to a native piece of content, surrounding it by a sponsored ads. So we're pairing social advertising, native content, as well as digital display to really take an upper funnel tactic and bring it to a real lower funnel tactic where we're driving and using our authoritative voice to increase engagement with display ads surrounding native content. It's performed very well for us. The social ads are performing 5 times higher than display. And once we actually get a user to the page, the standard display ads, whether they're HTML5 or even a static ad is performing 3 times higher than when we're pairing it with standard runner sites. So this is one of the new products in our roadmap that we've recently launched, I guess maybe a month or so ago.
Yep.
Maybe a quick get on to this too, because this is an awesome model, by the way. But something I think that's important about this, of why this is so successful, the 5 times higher number is, of course, there's no bots. Right. To get to this section on Facebook, right, everyone's got to be logged in with your personal account. So this is a non-bot kind of experience. Your viewability numbers are going to be very high with an ad like this.
Exactly. And we're also layering in specific audiences to target on Facebook. So it's a hyper-targeted ad, limiting, to Justin's point, the bot traffic or any sort of IVT there. Performs really well for us.
Did you partner with anyone on this?
So initially we were looking at doing that, but we found that we could build everything internally. There's a company called Social who is very good at it. They have solid insights, but really we had everything internally to be able to execute on this. So I would probably look at that first before outsourcing.
Yeah, they had a lot of the reporting out of the box, which we didn't, so it's a little more manual for us.
Right. It is very manual.
Yeah, we do it in-house.
You get the same rates. You get the same rates from LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook that they can get?
That's a great question. I don't know off the top, but
I don't know.
For our brands, certain brands do better on different networks. It's interesting, actually. CIO happens to do very well on Facebook, while Plan Advisor does not. It just says something about the audience, I guess, about their users, but it takes a little bit of like give and take.
Right. Okay. So kind of shifting gears more towards a display model. We want to be more creative in terms of leveraging our standard ad sizes and putting them in the right environments, but knowing that our audience is shifting more towards finding their information on social platforms. So we partnered with a company called Polar, you guys may have heard of them, to use their technology to pull a social post into our brand safe environment. We're literally just taking a 300 by 250 ad on a mobile device and pulling in a specific client's social post. The social post can populate video creative, static, an image carousel, anything that someone wants to post on their social platform, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We can literally pull that in here and, again, use our authoritative voice to kind of share their message here as well. Now, these ads are performing up to 9 times higher than standard display. We've run with possibly, I guess, like 10 partners now over the last few months, and the demand is there, and it's yielding strong results. So certainly a suggestion for the room, leveraging social, being able to pull that in. And yeah. Any questions on, Social.amp? No. The last example that I'm going to talk about is something that's a little more creative, not social related. We're a travel company.
Yeah.
We want to be able to give opportunities in standard display, in our normal footprint, to adhere to the guidelines, but make the standard display banner more relevant. So one opportunity for us was to take a virtual experience or a panoramic image and create an opportunity for an agent or someone in our space to experience what a cruise line is or what a hotel is in their environment, in their current environment. So we've developed this ad called the 360E Virtual Experience. And I'm sorry, this is a terrible example. This is my first mock.
I know. Like someone's basement.
Yeah, it's a terrible. I actually have a few. I don't know if we have time to go over that, but it's basically giving you the opportunity to experience what's going on in a hotel, in a specific vendor's location, and bringing that to you, all within a standard display ad. So we haven't launched this yet. We're in the middle of kind of flushing out all of our sales materials and preparing for launch. I think it's going to be accepted pretty widely, hopefully, fingers crossed. But this is just another example of how you have to kind of think outside of the box, but still understand, where Google stands with, how they're blocking their ads and how they want things to be presented on their browser. But it's an opportunity to, again, reinvent, be creative, change the industry. And yeah, hopefully for us, it works.
And it's fairly easy.
And you guys are you're in charge of this creative.
Correct. Yeah. So we partner with a company called Adventive, and that's probably false. We don't really partner with them. We purchased or use Adventive as sort of a Photoshop for ads. But we build it, we conceptualize it. We created standard templates to allow us to scale a little more easily. Because if this does sell how we're expecting it, I think, it will kind of change the game for our space, our media space.
But they provide the 360.
Right. So we're asking our clients to provide us with panoramic images. Everybody's been on a hotel site. You've gone through sort of a 360 experience, so they probably have that asset on hand. We're essentially just taking those, building it into our template, and pulling in that 360 experience or virtual experience into a standard display ad size. So again, pairing what Justin said, what Todd said with kind of these three examples, it's just being more creative, more innovative, thinking about how we can work with Google because they are right. Our experience hasn't been regulated as it should have been and has led to some bad practices. So, if we can kind of get in line with that, I think we stand a chance to fight that 11% decrease in revenue and really start to yield positive results for B2B.
Great. Awesome. Any questions? Any questions come in or?
No, but please feel free to submit them via the chat and we can ask them, so.
Great.
I'm just curious with ALM, what are you guys doing just in terms of specific ad formats, other things that we haven't talked about today, what are you working on your end as well?
I was hoping somebody else but I can certainly answer. Well, pop-ups are really doing well for us. We're experiencing a lot of the same things, and we've had to evolve. High impact depends on. We've got several markets. High impact ads have really done well for us, so we've had to evolve away from high impact interstitials to other high impact packages that kind of fit within the Google wrapper or acceptable terms, I should say. So we've shifted in that direction. We are partnered with Social Flow, actually. We are doing some things there, which have performed quite well. And I think we see things very similarly, and we're leveraging them across the portfolio. How do we integrate social as a front end into other ads that perhaps aren't performing as well, and then leveraging them that way? That's worked well for us. It continues to. Let's see, anything else that you guys see that's really performed from a standard ad standpoint?
How do you train your sales? How do you keep your sales team abreast of what's going on in this type of technical industry, right? So if they're out selling, and I'm sure they're not like reading blogs
depends on. I think we're fortunate and unfortunate in some cases, but I think we're fortunate. We've got so many different markets. Some of our markets are very client-centric, and some of our markets are agency-centric. So I would spin that, and I would say, actually, our salespeople are keeping us abreast of what's going on, because they're usually complaining about the fact that delivery issues, clients aren't happy, whatever it is. So we're usually hearing it from kind of both sides.
Great.
And we're educating, usually the markets that are client-centric, as was set up there, don't get it as quickly as those that are agency-centric. So we're hearing from all sides, and it benefits us, and we're sort of just adjusting based on what we're hearing or getting complaints about, right?
Yeah, good.
I was going to ask you guys, do you guys have any sort of viewability issues? Does that come up with any discussions with your clients or internally as you look at your own ads? Are there viewability issues that you guys are working on?
Absolutely, definitely. Actually, that service I had up in one of those slides, about Pixel 8, and, really, I know I was talking about invalid traffic, but those are also viewability vendors. They will show you percentages on all your ads in terms of viewability numbers, so you have a good sense of how viewable your ads are or not.
Right. Will they also provide consulting on how to make them more viewable?
They 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Two other partners I would probably add to that list is Double Verify and IAS. They do have publisher partnerships, so look into that as well.
Mm-hmm. And actually, as always, I'm the technology guy. I'm a skeptic for everything that they throw at me. And I was thoroughly blown away after using some of those services and cleaning up our traffic, and especially in terms of viewability. Absolutely. I think ads that we thought our viewability numbers were higher, on some campaigns they were quite low. Yeah.
If you haven't started, you can start with VFP. They have active view there, but having these other partners is definitely significantly valuable.
Yeah. Where do you think the intersection is with the ad experience and the kind of page load time? Because I think we've at times actually gotten crossways with it and even damaged our viewability by focusing so much on page load time for the reader that people were able to read load and all of a sudden not seeing ads.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the way we handle that is, again, not to go too far down the rabbit hole with it, but we do like asynchronous loading of all of our ads. So, right, the things that are off page don't load, right? That's a viewability thing too, right? You can't load the ad if it's not in view of the page, so we don't load anything until you're at a certain point on the page. But you bet, there was specific technology implementation done to make sure that works the way we wanted to, so that our viewability numbers were as high as they should.
Yeah. Right.
In terms of mobile, do you guys sell mobile products differently or separately from your desktop, or are you selling an integrated package?
We sell them separate.
You do?
Yeah, we sell them separate as a sponsorship, but I think we're kind of reevaluating that now. So,
right.
What are the issues around that?
I think for us, we're probably a little different than most of the industry, where our desktop numbers are like 80%, where I think most of the industry is probably the opposite way. So it's just not as valued for mobile right now. But our mobile numbers are growing. So, I think the options or opportunity is to just reevaluate and start to pair what we're doing on mobile with our experience on desktop.
We've definitely seen more companies, as you said, go the other way, where basically they don't want to have to defend either format. They basically say, listen, this is our audience, and when you buy this audience, it may be delivered in mobile or display. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the original question. What was the original?
I was wondering whether they're selling separate mobile packages.
Okay. What are average viewability metrics? What are you guys seeing?
For mobile?
General.
Or in general? I think it varies from publisher to publisher, but I mean, a solid viewable rate, it depends on who you let dictate it, right? Like Group M, their standard is their standard.
Their requirements are 70%.
Right.
What I'm asking as publishers, I know.
I thought some are 100.
Group M is 100%.
100%.
For some of our sites, before we started using these vendors, we had sites that were as low as 30% before we did this. And now that we've done some cleanup with our vendors and all this, we're above 75%. And we do have campaigns that contractually are required to get 100% viewability, in which case we will very specifically set up how those ads run for those campaigns. Right. Not all of the campaigns, though, that are sold have the viewability metric tied to it, but I've noticed now that many of them do.
Yeah. Folks, why don't we do this? I know it's been a while for our folks who are on the line. We're going to go ahead and let you guys go, but we'd love to continue the conversation here. If you guys want to talk a little more informally and one-on-one. Just before we break, I just want to address some things that are coming up around Connectiv. Room block for the Connectiv Executive Summit ends tomorrow. So if you're planning, please plan to make your reservation. We've hit our numbers, so there's no incentive to leave it open. So go ahead and make your room reservation. We've got a webinar coming up on April 25th on the paywall shift, turning users into subscribers. We're going to hear a case study from Farm Journal about the launch of their new paid product, Pro Farmer, as well as talk about some of the market research around there, what issues they identified, customer behavior they identified. So certainly, we hope you can turn out for that. Connectiv Executive Summit, May 14th to May 16th in Charleston, South Carolina. And then coming up later in May, having some of the winners from our recent Neal Awards, which are the Pulitzer Prize of B2B journalism, or so we like to say, recognizing the best in B2B content. We have some of the winners in some very specific technical categories, talking about some of their best practices and tips that they can share as well. So that's going to be posted soon. So with that, just for our folks on the line, thank you for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers. Excellent job. And thanks again for ALM for hosting us. We're going to continue the conversation here. But those of you on the line, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Great.